Hi, my name is Mark Senek. I'm the author of the weblog Ion FDA, and today I'm bringing to you the second in a three-part series about the changing policy landscape and the impact I believe it will have on pharmaceutical marketing. In the first part, we observed the changing policy landscape. In the next part, I'm going to talk about suggestions for action. But today, I'm going to focus on the changing communications landscape and the implications it has. First of all, I would submit an evidence that newspapers are suffering declining revenues in ad buys. And this is evident not only in terms of general advertising, but the number of DTC ad buys, the amount of money spent on DTC advertising by pharmaceutical companies, is also in decline. There are a lot of reasons for this. People are turning less to newspapers for their information. People are turning more to digital. You also have the fact that in terms of direct-to-consumer broadcast, a great many people, including my household, watch the evening news, where a great number of DTC advertising occurs for pharmaceutical companies. And we've recorded the news on a player. When we get to the commercial part, we fast forward through them. Direct-to-consumer advertising in its traditional form is becoming less relevant than it was in the past due to a number of technological changes and changes in the patterns of the target population in terms of their consumption of media. You can see that evidenced in the fact that online news is trumping print advertising, and doing so on a large scale. So you see a great deal of evidence of the fact that people are moving into digital, and not only moving into digital, but relying less on mainstream outlets, but going more and more to the blogosphere, to Twitter, and to other avenues where they're getting news from sources that they trust. In essence, what we've seen is a flow away from broadcasting to much more niche casting, people seeking out news sources that are speaking specifically to their interests and not broadly to the least common denominator. You see evidence of the effect of that with the fact that journalists are increasingly participants in the blogosphere. It used to be that blogs were formed, blogs were formed initially as a means of social connection, but quickly became much more attractive as news outlets, unedited news outlets. Unedited news outlets that actually have the ability to appear on a company's Yahoo Finance page or Google Finance page shortly after being published. Journalists have become increasingly active, and not only are they themselves active both as writers and readers, you almost will not find a major newspaper today that has not started its own blog or set of blogs. And that includes broadcast, as evidenced with CNN's reporters writing their own blogs, the New York Times writing their own blogs. And it's also interesting to note that in terms of Twitter, the New York Times now twitters, BBC now twitters, the Washington Post twitters. All of the social media have been recognized as news outlets by the major news organizations. 75% of reporters are using blogs for story ideas to get angles and insight and tone and sometimes even tips. And as I mentioned or referred to earlier, 1 in 4 journalists now have their own blogs. You not only see the migration of the consumer into digital, you're also seeing healthcare professionals going online. Here you see that nearly 10 hours a week are online for professional reasons. And 54% of physicians say the internet has increased adoption of recommended practice. And many are going online not only before work but after work. You also see a migration online with physician communities. Sermo is an example of that kind of physician community, which has, at this point, approximately 80,000 U.S.-based physicians in an online physician community. Their target is to reach 100,000 by the end of 2008. Here, physicians can share the latest medical insights, work together, and improve patient outcomes. My own company, Fleshman Hillard, manages a Sermo relationship for the parent company, Omnicom, and can provide access to for agencies and their clients. But the important thing to note is that Sermo represents an enormous change in the way physicians are not only communicating with each other, but communicating about pharmaceutical products, brands, and outcomes. There have been some existing forays into the digital media by pharmaceutical companies to date. YouTube channels have been formed by J&J, GlaxoSmithKline, and Abbott, all with varying degrees of commitment, organization, and J&J being by far and away the furthest developed. Facebook affinity pages have been developed. Again, J&J has been very aggressive in this area, forming affinity pages for mothers of newborns, for mothers of patients with ADHD, and in the blogosphere, J&J again obviously employing a very integrated digital media strategy, developed the corporate blog J&J By the Way. It also bears mentioning that GSK, when they took a Lee over-the-counter, also developed a blog for that product and the patients who would be interested in trying the product. So, a few conclusions about the communications environment. What we saw in the first presentation is that policy changes are probably going to increasingly restrict traditional means of outreach to key target audiences, i.e. physicians and patients. DTC is not going to look in 3 years what it looks like today, and the ability to reach out to physicians through direct relationships with key medical societies is likely to change given the course of current investigations. We see that communications is moving from broadcasting to niche casting. People are seeking information of their own choosing, not what is chosen for them. We also see that digital has become the preeminent source of news and information for an increasing part of the population. It's worthy to note that pharma is far behind in development of digital strategies, but the development of those strategies may be forced upon them by policy changes that are currently underway. And it's worth noting that branding is substantially taking shape and being reshaped in the digital environment where the pharmaceutical companies are largely absent. Thanks for tuning in to this section of the presentation. I invite you to come to the final section looking at the tools that are available for pharmaceutical companies and what might be done now to prepare for what I imagine are very sure and strong changes to come in the policy and communications environment.